All right, so you've gotten Blender, you've gotten DAZ, you've gotten your character, you have your bridge, you've gone to GitHub, you have your app that you can actually interface with the character. One step we like to take right here is by selecting your rig, what you want to do is go over and turn what they call your constraints off. You click on this tab here, and then what you want to do is actually turn off these constraints, which are limits on each one of your rig that is trying to kind of mimic how far an elbow would bend or how far an arm would bend. But actually we're turning those off because there will be a natural movement to radical, but what you want to do is make sure that it's as free as possible so it's not constraining or holding back, as you want to get as much of that motion into your character as possible. So here's Ethan to actually help us now take that motion file from Radical and put it on our character.
So once you have your add-on enabled and you can see it in your impose mode, you will see there's the different options. I'm going to drag it out so it's all readable. Okay, so your starting frame is when it reads in the animation. That's just where it starts. So right now it's set to 0, so that's good. Number of samples is how many frames you want it to last, and for this demo we are going to do 500. And the keyframe number is, it tells it how many keyframes to wait until it keyframes another one. So right now it'll put one keyframe on every third frame. So starting at 0, it'll be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and so on. And we're going to change this to 5. Okay, so the source rig name is the FBX movement file. And so once you import the FBX, I haven't yet, but once it's imported, you'll input the name of it in this text box, I guess. The destination rig name is the destination rig. So in this case, it would be Svea. Actually, I'm going to switch files so that it matches. Okay. Layout. Okay, so to get, first we have to get a bone mapping file off of GitHub. And so if you're on Nick Keeline's page in the Keymap Blender retargeting add-on, if you go to example, you'll want the radical. For this one, we're going to use the radical to DAZ because the rig we're using came out of DAZ. So to download it, you click on it, click raw, and hit Control S. And it'll save it, and the save type will be a JSON file. And yeah, we can just leave that as radical to DAZ. Okay, so once you have that downloaded, you go back to Blender, and in the Keymap add-on, you click the little file folder on the bone mapping file, and it will bring up this window, and then you just go find it. And mine is in downloads and radical to DAZ JSON. And then you accept that and read in bone mapping file. Another thing you will need, obviously, is your FBX file. So to get that file, import FBX, and then you go find that. Desktop, Sweden motion capture. This one, Scene 5 Part 1 knock-in, is the one we want. And an important step, once you've selected it, before you import it, hit the little drop-down arrow next to Armature in your side panel and check the box Automatic Bone Orientation. If you do not check that box, the bone, it won't look like a regular skeleton. It will be, all the bones will be crisscross and every which way. So once you have that box checked and the FBX selected, import the FBX. Sometimes it takes longer than others. This one was pretty quick. And then I usually, just so I can see both of them, I just kind of drag it off to the side. Okay. So now, go back into pose mode, select the FBX and the rig of your character. So then when you go into pose mode, you can move them both around and edit both of them instead of just one or the other. So you have your bone mapping file. The source rig name is the FBX file, which is root, so that's correct. The destination rig is knock-in, so I have to change that. And then just make sure the names are correct. So if you go, I think this one's it. Yeah. So if you select a bone on either of the armatures, you can look over here and say, okay, source bone name is hips, destination bone name is hip. So that's all correct. And you can do that for each of the bones if you want to. It's not really necessary. So once you have both of them in there and the settings correct, you can transfer the animation. And one thing I like to do, just so I can see the progress of it, is there we go. I will toggle the system console. So you go to Window, toggle System Console, and it'll bring up this. And as you're transferring the animations, it will read them out in the side. Okay, so now that it is done transferring, you can see that the knock-in character has moved over to where the FBX file is. And then if we hit the play button, oh, oops, frame went out to 592. So you can just look and see where the end of the keyframes are, and then change the end of your timeline to that. Usually I'll put it just a little farther. Okay, so now when we hit play, oops, it's running really slow. Little thing, if your timeline, if your playback is going really slow and you want it to run at normal speed, if you go to playback, you can change this little drop down from no sync to AV sync, and that will skip frames in your timeline. so that it'll play back at regular speed. So I believe in this one he's playing the fiddle, so you can see that he's holding it in his left hand and moving the bow with his right. Obviously it's not perfect, but any motion capture file you're going to have to tweak and get it all tuned up. One other thing that I forgot to mention is that when you import your bone mapping file, it will change the starting frame, the number of samples, and your keyframe number. And so you'll have to import your file and then change the settings up top. And once you've changed those settings, if you want to save that file so that you can say, okay, this bone mapping file is for this character, you go into this file folder on the click on this file in the bone mapping section, and then you just go find where you want to save your thing. So yeah, just the desktop, and you can rename it knocking bone mapping, and you hit accept, and it'll change it in here, and then you save bone mapping file, and it just saved all of this information, and now it's tied to this character. So then when we import that bone mapping file in any instance of Blender, it will change all of these settings, the names, and everything to match what it is at right now. So that's the basics of downloading, installing, and using the KeyMap Rig Transfer add-on.
All right, well, thank you, Ethan. Good job as usual. And now we're going to move on and do a little bit of animation on top of our character.